Greetings, I'm today sat by the Trent Mersey Canal in Kidsgrove by the Canal Tavern, and the reason that I'm doing this is because very close to this spot, once upon a time, another tram road began its journey. And it was probably somewhere over there was a wharf. I'm not sure where exactly because obviously all this industrial site's been built since, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace that tram road. It was, like some of the others that we followed, an early one. I'm talking the early 1800s, and it would have run through this site. And I'm going to call it the Trubshaw Tramroad because its primary purpose, not its only purpose, but its primary purpose was to serve the Trubshaw Collieries, which were near Newchapel, and it was to take coal from those collieries down from the colliery down to the canal, the Trent Mersey Canal there, where then obviously the coal could be taken off to wherever it needed to go. It's a great tram road to follow, and it's a great tram road to follow because you can actually trace the vast majority of its route. And not only that, but there isn't just one route, it's a network. And in fact, the bit that we're on now is the bit that you can trace the least. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show roughly where it was, and then we're going to continue later where the track bed can be seen. Now, you see these junctions here where the traffic lights, so the tram road would have gone across somewhere like that, and then gone, well, under this railway. Obviously the railway wasn't built when it was built, but probably somewhere around that bridge. It would have gone through that bridge. Anyway, let's go there ourselves, and I'll pick it up in a second. As you can see, I'm now walking through the bridge, and I actually do think one thing that's very interesting about this bridge is that for some weird reason it's in two tunnels, as it were, and I can't understand why. You can have a look there. And is that because one of them originally was built for the tram road and the other for the road? I don't know, but to me it's just a funny way to build it. Anyway, it could have been because it is possible that the tram road was working at the same time that the railway was built. The railway was built in 1848. Now, this green area where I'm going now is where the tram road went next. So let's investigate a bit further. We're at the level of the main line, you can see there, and that's because at later times there were sidings here, and some of the sidings actually followed the line of the tram road. So where I'm working now was a siding, and this followed the route of the tram road. Now, what that of course means is that the site's really changed since tramroad days, and what they will have done is widened this out, flattened it more. And the reason that the sidings are here is they actually constructed exactly on the route of the tramway a railway to lead to a colliery, which was just up here, which was one of the pits that the tramroad originally served. And where in the tramroad days what there was a short spur linking off and going kind of up the hill. I say a spur, I don't think it was ever connected. It might have been a ropeway or a tubway. But the idea was, I suppose, that you got the coal down to there, and then it could be loaded onto the tram road, which could then be used to take it down to the canal. It's all a bit overgrown at the moment. We're actually walking along a stream valley, and the stream is to my right, and there is what looks like another track bed beyond that. That could have been a lane, it could have been the track road for the tramway, but to me, looking at the maps, this one is it. And it would make no sense to cross the stream only to cross back again afterwards. Why would you do that? And there is also another reason why I suspect it was on this side, and that is because when I was investigating this for the first time a few years ago, I found a stone block. Now that said, it wasn't in situ. Well, it wouldn't have been because they built a railway on top. As you can see, there's the stream, and the line there is what looks like another track bed. We're on a very muddy part now. This is when you wish it was still a railway. I often say at places like this I should come in the winter when the vegetation's not so high, and you would see more, but at the same time you wouldn't see a lot because the vegetation's still pretty high. But when you're here you can actually see that this has been levelled out. We are definitely walking on a very level track bed, albeit a very level track bed with a lot of stuff growing on it. The effect is made even worse by the fact that the track winds a bit. Now there's a stone. Yes. And is that a stone that's in situ? It could be. That could be a block in situ, of course. I suppose they could have just lain the other railway on top of that. See, the one I found before, I did find two. I found one in situ, and then I also found one here at this tiny little bridge. And what I did with that one, I think the one I just stopped at is the one that was in situ. I found it just there in the stream bed. I fished it out, and that is now in the museum at the Foxhill Steam Railway at Caversham Road Station. I have to say, last time I came this way it was a lot less densely vegetated than this. Now look here, you can see quite clearly now where the edge of the track bed was and how it's been built up, and even so it's a bit of a gradient, but it's quite clear here. We burst out from the undergrowth and into a problem, because as you can see there's very clearly never been a track bed here, and that is because this field has been re-landscaped. So what I'm going to do is just over the brow of the hill I'm going to pick up this again, and then we'll continue on our journey. I'm now at the other side of the fields where we finished a second ago, which has since been landscaped. Now, quite why this field has ever been landscaped, I don't know, but there, and you can just see them, are the trees that we walked through before with all the mud, and this is the track bed again. I think why it may have been landscaped is over there, perhaps where that tower is on the horizon. I'm not sure, I haven't checked this fully, but there was a colliery, and this is the one that I said there's probably a tubway off it down to this tramroad. And what it may have been is that there may have been slag heaps from that colliery, or when they were re-landscaping that, they did this as well. Now, whether I'm quite on the track bed now, I doubt, I would imagine, you see where the hedge ends there, it went straight across, and that would make sense. But whatever the case, I am definitely on it now. And so we're back on the Trubshaw Tramroad, and it's an easy one to follow. It is a footpath, and to be fair, even the vegetation's not too high, that's not bad. But of course the only problem is there's no real sign of the line, because there wouldn't have need to be. It's a flat field, so there's no earthworks. We just follow the hedgeway. Of passing interest is this fence here, which is made of concrete railway sleepers. One might consider, was this line converted to standard gauge? Certainly the sidings back down there were, and I have seen evidence to suggest that the standard gauge could have gone further and laid with concrete sleepers, and then they are what's used to make the fence. But to be honest, I very much doubt it, because actually just across to our left in the next field, or beyond the next field, is the main line, and I somehow suspect that the sleepers will probably come from that instead, particularly as they're concrete. And even if this was relayed as a standard gauge line, looking at the timing, they would have been wooden sleepers. It is amazing, actually, and this tramroad is a really good example of it, how many tramroads that there are footpaths now following the route. And I suppose what the reason for that could be is that after the tramroad was pulled up or ceased using, people used it to walk along, and so when official footpaths came into place, it was just such a well-used route that it became a footpath. I don't think it would have been anything to do with, you know, official rights of way in law. How legal some of these tramroads were. I mean, some we know, like the North Staffordshire Railway of 1815, there was certain legislation or legal proceedings to be able to construct it. But then that went through the land of a number of different landowners. Shorter ones that you know, were like tubways on a colliery and that, well, you know, the colliery owner owned the land and he could more or less do what he wanted with it. This one is a bit interesting because this is somewhere in between, and I think that there would have had to have been some kind of legal allowance for this line. And so I suppose it could be that there was a right of way here, and that's why it's since become a footpath. And it has become a footpath for its entire length, apart from the bits where it's been built over, and at the end of the line it was built on as a house estate. We'll see that later. And I suppose you don't need a footpath through the house estate because there's roads. But there are paths even there that, you know, perhaps follow as close to the route as one might get. So could it have been that it was established as a right of way? I don't know. I don't know enough about the legal side of things like that. But it's intriguing, and it certainly is a running theme that so many tramroads have become footpaths, which is great for people like me who want to research them, because it makes the job a hell of a lot easier. As you can see with some of the lines, when I've been fighting through vegetation when they're not footpaths, and, you know, trying to miss electric fences and things like that, which are not pleasant, because I did get zapped by one the other day. But you know what, all in a good cause. Talking of vegetation, it returns, so does the mud. One thing I can say here is there don't seem to be any stone blocks in situ, which is interesting, particularly when one considers a bit further on. Yuck. Right, now I'm going to stop here because although this looks like a pretty nondescript place, you can see that down below us is a stream. And as I have said on other videos, streams are often very interesting because streams mean culverts, and culverts mean tangible evidence of engineering. So let's have a look. So as you can see, what I've done now is I've come down to have a look at the culvert a lot closer. And it's quite interesting because at this end, as you can see, it's made of brick. And it's really quite a long one. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to have a look at the other side. I'm at the other side of the culvert now, and you can't get here as easily as the first side. And it looks initially the same, like it's made of brick. But look at that. If you can see this, the lower sides of it are stone. And what has happened is this culvert was made of stone and then the brick was added later. And earlier ago, a few years ago, I actually went really down into it and went with wellies on and had a look. And the culvert's been extended, so once it was half the width it is now. And the reason for that is because the line has been widened and the new brick top was put on the stone culvert then. The question is why? Now, according to Baker's book and others, the mainline railway only went as far as the sidings that we went to earlier. But I have seen a source, and I'm annoyed because I can't remember what it was, that says actually all of this bit was converted into a mainline railway. Or I say mainline, I mean a standard gauge railway, and then it ended just up from here, which would explain why the line was widened and became you know, you needed a much later wider culvert. The other explanation could be is that the line was originally single track, and because of the amount of traffic became a double track line. This is feasible, and certainly later on as we follow the track bed, to me it looks like a double track line. But also the branch off to Mount Pleasant looks like a single track one, and there's a culvert there that I'm going to show you later. So let's get back on walking and we'll have a look. Okay, I'm back on the track bed of what was definitely a tram road and could possibly have been a standard gauge railway. And I've crossed over the culvert. I mean, it's both one reason why that culvert was so long, and I hope the video showed that. It's very clear in real life. It was because we're crossing that stream at a diagonal. Now, we're getting near to a very interesting little spot here. And it's just near this tree. And that is because here there's another line. And again, this is one of those situations where in the winter it's dead clear, in the summer it's far less clear. But if you have a look that way, there is another line. It is another footpath as well. And what we'll do, we'll leave the main line for a second and go and explore it. I'm now on the Hall Green Canal, and if I zoom into the distance there, you can just about see a lock. And that lock's quite an unusual lock in that it's only a couple of feet deep. And that's because that marks the end of the Hall Green Canal and the start of the Macclesfield Canal. And most people think of them one and the same because the Hall Green Canal is only about a mile long. But they were actually built separately, separate. This was built by the Trent Mersey company, and then after that, and the reason there's a small lock is there's a slight difference in water level, it's the Macclesfield Canal company. Now, the reason that I'm stood here is because along there was where the spur off the Trubshaw Tramroad that we saw before terminated. So I'm not quite sure where it terminated, but it would have climbed up that bank and gone round, and I think it actually probably terminated on the Macclesfield Canal, just beyond the lock, and it would have gradually made its way down there, and that's a reason. But wherever it did, and I will explain that in a second, it would have then gone round onto here and then followed this road. So I'm actually walking on the track bed, and interestingly, the bridge that I'm walking over, when I was on my brother's boat on the canal a few years ago, and looking at that bridge, it's very unusual in that it's not humpbacked, it's flat, as you can see, and every canal bridge is a humpback bridge, but that's a flat bridge. And the only reason for that I can think of is because it had to be flat to carry the tramroad. Now, we're quite lucky here, because normally you have to sit through me walking along tramroads at the same kind of pace that a horse would have done all those years ago. But now, with the aid of modern technology, we can drive along it, and so this spur will be over very quickly, because it follows the lane. Now, whether there was always a lane here, or whether after they pulled it up it was converted into a lane, I don't know. Put the music up. But as you can see from the lane, it is a pretty flat lane. Like I say, I don't know. Did the tramway road come first or the lane? But a lot of roads, a lot of tramroads did run along lanes. So it wouldn't be that unusual for that to happen. This bridge is, of course, much later. This is from the railway, and I think, judging by the shape and you know how steep that bridge is, that by the time the railway had been built, this spur was not working, because I think you wouldn't have built it like that otherwise. Now, why I think this spur went actually further and just past the lock is because then, of course, it would be going to the different canal company, and what I think it might have been is that the fact that that canal company may have offered different rates, so they wanted to get their materials to either of them. Now, to continue walking along this spur, we've got to go through that stile there, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'll see you in a second. Okay, so there's the road we've just been along, and we came there, stopped the video at this point, climbed over the stile, and I'm heading on. So we're still on the track bed. Again, this is one of those issues where if you go in the summer, it's all a bit overgrown, and when the vegetation is gone in the winter, this is really clear, this little short section. But you know, it's not gone now, is it? To be fair, this bit, there's no evidence, because as you can see, even in very recent times, it's been ploughed over. So there's no hope of finding any stone blocks here. But it's clear as to where it was, because it was dead flat and straight. So, you know, there were no earthworks for the plough to destroy. So all he would have done is worked the stone blocks out. I mean, this Trubshaw Tramroad is great because it is a veritable network of tramroads, and of course it's a network that could have been far more extensive than even we realise. And one of my other videos deals with the Stonetrough to Trubshaw line, and that could have actually linked in with this. It seems to have been laid with the same kind of stone blocks. So was it just an extension of this line that went all the way up to Stonetrough and Tower Hill? Who knows? Who knows? Now, This bit's, as you can see, getting a little clearer, because what we're approaching is quite a fine little embankment. And again, this is the one to visit in the winter, because this embankment is really clear when the grass is low. What's interesting now is, well, there were no stone blocks there. Once we're out of the way of the ploughs, there is loads of stone on the ground, and I had a go at covering this earlier, but it's it doesn't have a peg in it, which is annoying. But we go over this little embankment here. Now, yeah, there's loads of stones in the ground, but I don't know if they're blocks or not. And as you can see, we're back to the tree where we started. Well, so we can now continue on the main line. There was, of course, a culvert there as well, but I didn't investigate it because I had a look at that earlier, and it's since been redone with concrete. Something very interesting here, though, is stone block in situ. That is a hole there, I have to, so far as I'm aware, it's the only one there is. I mean, there are other bits of stone around that could be, but that's the only one I've managed to really excavate. Beautiful tramroad to walk, especially on a summer's evening. And now we're coming up to the road, and this is another interesting point because it's another place where our tramroad forks. And you see the road just coming up there. The tramroad crossed the road just behind the car and carried straight on to Trubshaw. But there was also a branch that went away to the left. We're going to explore that first before we continue on with the main line. So, you can see the stile, that's the main line, but we're going to go through that 5-bar gate and see where that leads us. Right, so I'm now going to be going along this branch of the railway, which we call the Mount Pleasant branch, because that's where it ends up. Just a small point of interest here, there's a pile of stones. Now, none of them look of particular interest at the moment, but the reason I pointed them out is that when I was researching this line for the first time, several years ago, I did find one there that was had a hole in it, and that is now in the museum at the Foxfield Light Railway. As with the rest of this network, this is a footpath, and as we can see straight away, this is really narrow compared with the main line that we've been on, which means that it was almost definitely single track, whilst the other one was almost definitely double track. Got a bridge over the stream here. Interestingly, there is no signs whatsoever of any culvert there. Although it's very clear, I mean, look here. You can see there the edge of the embankment. We really are on an embankment at this bit. Obviously, when we get out onto the field, it's less clear. Ah, there we are. So you can see how far down that is. Down there. And also on that side as well. So this is a very clear trackway, but there's no culvert. And what I think is the case is that there's no culvert because it was too high, and it was probably on a wooden bridge. It was probably too big for a culvert. There are stones in this field, but I doubt that any of them are blocks from the plateway, solely because this field's been ploughed so many times that, you know, any that were there, and I'm sure they would have been shifted anyway, will have got broken up or moved by now. So yes, this is single track, and yes, part of the same system, but also different because of the single track element, which could mean different things. In Alan Baker's book about industrial locomotives in North Staffordshire, there is the suggestion that this was the earliest line, and the line went from the Mount Pleasant Colliery and then down along the branch to Hall Green Canal, which I've already been along. Now, for the reasons that I stated whilst I was on the Hall Green Canal bit of the video, I don't think that's the case, because I think that came later when that canal was built, and it was so they could then access a different market, as in trade with the Macclesfield Canal Company rather than the Trent Mersey Canal Company. And of course, the Macclesfield Canal came much later, in the 1830s. It is thought, of course, that, you know, the tramway could date from the 1830s, so therefore that was built first, and then a later branch to Trent Mersey. It's possible, but since this tramway uses the same blocks and the same system as, you know, some of the very much earlier ones, like the North Staffordshire Railway of 1815 and the Woodhead Tramroad, I think it is earlier than the 1830s. Because also the standard of the engineering seems to be more like the earlier tramroads. In a minute I'll show you something interesting about the engineering, which also makes me think that they were built at the same time. But yeah, so this line, what it did do, and we know definitely, is it served collieries, and it served the collieries at Mount Pleasant, which is, I suppose you could say, at the foot of the Mount Cop Hill. It also, we talk of Hall o' Lee, and this has been referred to as the Hall o' Lee branch. The Hall o' Lee collieries are very nearby, but I don't think it served them, because a totally separate line was built from those to the canal. Now that line, say, finding anything written about it is very difficult, but much later, and probably locomotive worked, because it could be if this closed, then they built that line to then serve Hall o' Lee collieries, because this one wasn't operating anymore. Who knows? I'll talk about that a bit more in the video about this one. But now we're at a very interesting place on here, and it's a place that I want to stop for a moment. And that is here, crossing over the stream. And as you know by now, I'm a big fan of culverts, because they can tell us a lot. So what I'm going to do is check this one out. Right, here I am down by the culvert, and we can see this one a lot clearer than the larger culvert that I went to before. But look at it. I'll zoom in a bit. The lower part there is built of stone, and then the upper bit, the arch, is built of brick. And that is exactly the same as part of the culvert that we saw on the main line. Now, if you remember, and of course it wasn't very clear on the video, but on the main line there was also The bit where at the other end, it was all brick, which suggests that it had been either widened at some point to accommodate double track or been converted to standard gauge because it was a later addition. But what that is definitely telling us, in my opinion, is that this was built at the same time as part of the same system. We can also see quite clearly that it is not very wide at all. This was only ever single track. Anyway, there we are, that's the culvert. Let's go on with our journey. Okay, I'm back on the track bed again after scrambling down. We can see the embankment quite clearly there as well. I say, this is not a very spectacular tram road, but it is quite clear. Clearer than a lot. And again, this is another one of those that if you come here in the winter and the grass is low, you can see a hell of a lot more. And in particular, a hell of a lot more of this next bit, because this next bit is kind of waist high, if not more, in plants. Now there is a footpath through there. I think that's it, but I'm not going to bother walking through it. What I'll do is I'll meet you one of those trees, which is where the tramroad crossed the road. Okay, I'm on the road now, and that is the path that you went through the field that we just saw with the very high vegetation, and now comes down to the road. And I suppose the first thing that's very clear is just how much higher than the road it is, and there's no evidence of any engineering here. So to me, that means that it would have crossed to about here on a diagonal, as you can see, coming across like this, and then gone that way, and it would have gone across on a bridge, because the difference in height is too great anyway, and because it would have shaved only such a tiny corner off the field, the footpath, even though it goes through that other little bit of field there, it doesn't go through the actual field but now rejoins here. So there we are. That's where it rejoins, and what it then did is go down here towards Mount Pleasant. So we're actually, when we've risen again, we're on the track bed. Now, as we're walking along here, it's interesting to just see over there. That is that kind of area over there is where the other tramroad, the Hull Lee one, ended. And of course, at one time I wondered if there was a link between the two. And I have walked it, and I don't think there ever was. And I've really tried to look, because it would make sense in some ways to be a link between the two. But eventually I don't think there was. And I don't think there was because there's no evidence on the ground. Now this field has obviously been ploughed and planted now, but before, when I went, it was totally empty and very rough, as if it had not been ploughed for many, many years. And I could see no sign of that. Actually, do you know what? I think actually our tramroad went through that way more. Yes, I remember that now. I think we're actually not on the tram. There's me telling you we're on the tramroad. Footpath cuts across. This is where I need to have brought the Ordnance Survey map, which I haven't. But we now go into this desolate looking site, and this has been a bit of a scrapyard, and I don't know what over the years. But yeah, we go into here, and this was the terminus of the line. This was the terminus of the line. So this was the Mount Pleasant Collieries, and I have to say, I've looked through all the junk here to see if I could find anything tramroad related, and there is nothing, or at least not that I can find. But it's all 20th century stuff, this is. But yeah, so I did tell a little lie there, because I said we were walking along the tramroad, and actually I think I was wrong. I think the tramroad did cut across diagonally, and of course there's the footpath as proof of it. And what we're doing, we kind of re-entered the route again now, and there it is. You see we've got a footpath going straight there. That said, looks rather uneven for a tramroad, but that is the more logical route, and it would have ended somewhere around here. And this was Mount Pleasant Colliery. So was this the terminus of the original line, or was this just the terminus of a branch? Who knows? Anyway, let's get back onto that main line now. Okay, so I'm over the stile now, and I'm looking back towards the main line that goes to the canal. And this way, of course, is the branch up to Mount Pleasant, but we're following the main line of the tramroad again towards Trubshaw Colliery. And this is a really nice section on the track bed now. As you can see, it's really nice and level, engineered on both sides. The only problem with this one is it gets rather muddy, so I hope this video is going to be nice and clear. Problem we've got at the moment, there's a stone embedded there. I wonder if that's a block. I don't think the blocks are still in situ here, and of course one of the reasons, like I said earlier, there's other stones there, is that you know, I found one embedded in a wall and whatever earlier. But the other thing is, I think you know, this has never been a road or anything, and I think if there was, we'd see more of them, like we see them in the on the North Staffordshire Railway 1815 in the wooded areas. So yeah, little sad point here. Somebody's put a load of memorials for a young man. I don't know who he is. It says Daz there. Whether he died here or committed suicide here, I don't know, but it's always sad to see that. Yeah, the thing is, it's been dry and then raining, and then dry and then raining, just like so. It never gets a chance to for the mud to dry out at the moment. The weather's so unpredictable. It's quite yucky. I do keep saying it's better to go in the winter when the vegetation's low, but then I suppose the mud's even worse. You have a few more stones here, but I don't see any evidence of holes for pegs in them. So, like I say, I don't think the stones are in situ for this line. You can see here how beautiful engineered it is. I think, I'm going to be honest, that this was a double track line at some time. I really do. When I compare this to some of the other plateways that I've been to, this looks double tracked to me. And why not? Because there were a lot of small mines around here. There have been a lot of traffic. If not double tracked, this bit was sidings, because there's obviously been some kind of quarrying activity there. And just on that side, it is recorded that there was a mine. And I remember when I first started researching this line, it says, oh, look at that. I mean, was that even a spur off? Because it looks like it, doesn't it? And that could have joined there. So that looks like it could have been a spur off. Although if we have a look at that place where there would be a culvert, there's no evidence of it. Intriguing. Because I mean, it's entirely likely there was a spur, because this did serve that little mine. Like I say, when I was researching it, it was referred to as gold, which made me think, oh, is it a gold mine? But then, you know, I know of no gold mining around here. I don't think there's ever been any gold mining around here. So whether that meant that someone called Gold discovered it, or whether it was just the name of the pit, I don't know. But you can see the waste from that pit far better now. I've just stepped off the track bed for a moment, so there's the colliery that I was on about. And just so you get this view of the track bed going along there, the engineering's quite apparent. Let's get back on. Say, all these small scale mining concerns, these were the lifeblood not just of these tramroads but of the entire country. I mean, those are what built the Industrial Revolution, and a lot of people, you know, they think of the grand structures of the Industrial Revolution, and certainly, you know, some of the fantastic stuff like the Forth Road Bridge or the Box Tunnel. But actually, the Industrial Revolution began and was fed by thousands upon thousands of tiny pits like that one, served by tramroads that took them to canals such as the one we were at earlier. It's going to turn round there. There's a better picture of it. So that track may have gone there, you know, just to pick up materials better. And what a lovely lovely section this is. It's really clear. Again, come in the winter, vegetation's lower, it's clearer, but even now, to me, this is very, very clear. Maybe this is me just being a bit of an old romantic, but it actually reminds me a little bit of some of those Welsh narrow gauge railways. I have to say, I think it would be great to actually open up a tramroad as a preserved railway, using horses to bring to life that much forgotten era of our history. I don't think it'll ever happen though, because the problem is there are so many steam railways that, you know, you need a certain degree of business to keep any preserved line going, and I think the steam railways are already crowding themselves out of a bit at the moment. But also people want steam, and the horses would be very, very expensive to maintain. And yeah, and also of course a lot of them, not this line, but a lot use inclined planes, which you can't, I don't think, I mean, I'm not an expert on health and safety, but I don't think the health and safety man would be happy about putting passengers on inclined planes these days, because they were never meant for passengers anyway. It was meant for freight. There we are. So there's some stones there, but none of them look like the ones that we're after. I mean, the vegetation here is much higher than when I was there before, but this has been covered over since. The level is slightly raised. I think somebody made it a bit of a trackway at some point, and it's very uneven in a way that it would never have been in the plateway days. It's been messed around with a bit. But this is the route, and actually that's much clearer here. But yeah, if you go, you can see, I mean, it obviously didn't go that way, it did go there, but I think that the whole level's been raised. And if you look underneath, there's some hardcore, there's even bits of tarmac and whatever here, and I think that was to accommodate tractors and the like. Yes, if you ever did want to preserve a line, I think this one could be quite a nice little one. Could even use that as an engine shed, or, well, not an engine shed, there weren't any engines, but as a truck shed or a stable for the horses. Look, you can see that ain't the original flooring. Because the only problem is, if you were to preserve this line in particular, pretty soon after this spot, there would be nothing to preserve, because the line is obliterated for the last part of its journey, which is a crying shame, but that's that. They've built a house estate over it. My sense of geography is not brilliant, but it's somewhere around here there's a little park that is called locally Chinky Park, and nobody quite knows why, but the council tie themselves in knots because they wanted to do it up. They didn't want to use the term chinky, but the problem is that's what it's called. What do you do in a situation like that? Lord alone knows. Glad they've got that problem to deal with and not me. Now, we're actually just going off the track bed now. The track bed did come up to the road where we're coming, and that's because the stream, as you can see from those row of trees, also came up to the road, but then it kind of, I suppose, avoided going over the stream and then disappeared off in that direction again. So, right where the sign is for Mow Cop, it then went off again, but again that is now a house estate. It's all obliterated, and so we have to leave it here. But what we'll do, we'll come back and have a look at the Trubshaw Colliery itself, or what little is left of it. So see you in a minute. As you can see, I'm in the houses, and the reason I'm in the houses is since the last bit where we met the road, the traces of the line have been totally and utterly lost. But by looking at maps of that time, we know that it went somewhere around here. Now, in no way am I suggesting that this path is the track bed, because it's bloody steep. Interestingly, there is a footpath that runs along the side of the Trubshaw pit site, this one, and this footpath probably doesn't follow the route of the line, because maps have said that the line came in from this side, and there was a lot of sidings that came in and kind of went into the colliery system at this kind of angle. But I do think the footpath is interesting, because obviously I've talked before about footpaths and the way that we can often trace lines through footpaths. And what I'm guessing is that there was a footpath that followed the route of the line, and then when they built the houses, the right-of-way was maintained, but shifted to the back of the housing estate, which is now what we're walking along. And so essentially, what we are on at now is getting towards the terminus of the line. We may be on the track bed itself, I very much doubt it. And so it's just worth saying a few lines about this. Firstly, the other Trubshaw Tramroad. The other Trubshaw Tramroad came in from that direction, from Stonetrough and Tower Hill. I've done a video on it. I treated them as two separate tramroads because even though I've said it could have been an extension of this one, personally I don't believe it was, because that one we know from the blocks we found had double hulled blocks. This one has single hull blocks. So to me they were built by separate people at separate times, but I suspect, because looking ahead where the path comes down, that is the natural route of the other tramroad, that perhaps somewhere around here on the edge of the Trubshaw pits there was an interchange. But whether there was or not, the main purpose of this line was always the Trubshaw Colliery, and that is this lot over here. Now the problem is you can't see a lot here. If we step back a bit, and I hope to make a short clip of what it looks like from the road, you can see the undulations of the old pit workings very clearly. Then there is stuff to see. One of the other reasons is right in the middle of the pit there's now a children's playground, and I don't want to be walking around a children's playground making videos because I just don't think that will go down that well. But basically, these are the Trubshaw pits. They were extensive pits. There was later standard gauge mineral lines that went to them, I think. I haven't got the documents there to reference. But this, or somewhere around this spot, was the terminus of the Trubshaw Tramway. I hope you found this video interesting. Please subscribe to my channel and there will be more coming. Thanks for watching, but more importantly, get yourself on a tramroad walk, either one of these around North Staffordshire that I've been doing, or if you live somewhere else, research some of your own and post your own videos on YouTube, because I think one of the things that's clear from looking at house estates like this is that if you don't record it, it's gone sooner than you know. Okay, thanks for watching. And so finally, there is the Trubshaw Colliery remains.